Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're traveling back in time, over 2,000 years, to witness the birth of a colossal empire that would shape the destiny of a nation. Imagine a land torn apart by centuries of conflict, where 7 kingdoms fought endlessly for power. It was a time of chaos, known as the Warring States, period. But out of this turmoil, one young, ambitious king would rise. A man with a vision so grand it seemed impossible. His name was Yingzing, and he would become known to history as Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. This is the story of how he forged the Qin Dynasty, the very first unified empire in Chinese history. So, who was this young king with such a monumental dream? Born as Yingzeng, he inherited the throne of the state of Qin, one of the 7 major powers at the time. Life back then was a constant struggle. Each state had its own ruler, its own army, its own laws, and even its own way of writing. The land was a patchwork of rivalries, and war was a grim, everyday reality. But Yingzeng wasn't content with just ruling his own kingdom. He saw the suffering caused by the endless wars, and envisioned a different future, a future where all the lands under heaven, or Tiangtia, would be united under a single, powerful ruler. He dreamed of peace through unification. This wasn't just a fantasy. Yingzeng was a brilliant strategist and a formidable leader. He surrounded himself with gifted advisors and generals, like the legalist scholar Li Si and the general Meng Tian. He modernized his army, turning it into an unstoppable force. His tactics were a mix of brute force, clever diplomacy, and shrewd espionage. He would form alliances only to break them when the time was right, exploit internal conflicts within enemy states, and relentlessly push his armies forward. One by one, the other 6 kingdoms Han, Zhao, Wei, Xie, Yan, and fell before the might of Qin. It was a brutal, decade-long campaign, but it achieved its goal. In the year 221 BCE, the final rival state surrendered. Yingzeng's dream had become reality. The centuries of division were over. To mark this unprecedented achievement, he took on a new, grander title. He was no longer just a king. He declared himself Qin Shi Huang, which translates to first sovereign emperor of Qin. For the very first time in its long history, the land we now know as China was united under one banner, one rule, and one man. A new era had begun, but unifying the land was just the first step. Building a stable empire out of 7 warring states was an even greater challenge. How do you get people who were recently enemies to see themselves as part of the same nation? Qin Shi Huang's solution was radical and thorough. He understood that political unity meant nothing without cultural and economic unity. So, he launched a series of sweeping reforms that would change Chinese society forever. First, he abolished the old feudal system of the previous kingdoms, where local lords held all the power. Instead, he divided the empire into 36 commanderies, each governed by officials he appointed directly. This ensured that loyalty was to the emperor and the central government, not to local aristocrats. Then came one of his most brilliant and lasting changes: standardization. Imagine trying to run a country where every region has its own currency, its own system for weighing goods, and even its own written language. It would be a logistical nightmare. Qin Shi Huang put an end to that. He decreed that there would be one single written script for the entire empire. While people could still speak their local dialects, everyone who could read and write would use the same characters. This was a game changer for communication and record keeping. He also standardized the currency, casting round bronze coins with a square hole in the middle, which would remain the model for Chinese coins. For the next millennia, he even standardized the axle widths of carts, so they would fit into the ruts on the new, empire-wide road system he was building. Everything was designed for efficiency, control, and unity. These new roads were another marvel of engineering, stretching out from the capital city of Xianyang. This network connected the far-flung corners of his vast empire. Messages, goods, and, most importantly, armies could now travel at unprecedented speeds. This infrastructure wasn't just about convenience. It was a tool for consolidating his power and ensuring his rule could be enforced everywhere. But as impressive as these roads were, Qin Shi Huang was about to embark on a construction project so immense, so legendary, that it would become synonymous with China itself. To the north of his new empire lay a persistent threat: nomadic tribes, particularly the Xiongnu, who would frequently raid border settlements. To secure his northern frontier, the emperor ordered a monumental undertaking. He commanded hundreds of thousands of worker soldiers, peasants, and convicts to connect and fortify the existing defensive walls that had been built by the previous northern states. This was the birth of what we now know as the Great Wall of China. It was a project on an almost unimaginable scale. The work was grueling, the conditions were harsh, and the terrain was treacherous, winding over mountains and across deserts. It's a sobering thought that this incredible structure was built by hand, stone by stone, brick by brick. The human cost was immense. It is said that many of the workers who perished during its construction were buried within the wall itself, earning it the grim nickname of the longest cemetery on Earth. While the wall we see today was mostly rebuilt and extended during the later Ming Dynasty, it was Qin Shi Huang who established the vision and laid the foundation for this incredible line of defense. For centuries to come, the Great Wall would stand not just as a physical barrier, but as a powerful symbol of the Chinese Empire's strength, endurance, and determination to protect its people and its culture. Despite his immense power and historic achievements, Qin Shi Huang was haunted by one thing he couldn't conquer: his own mortality. He became obsessed with the idea of living forever. His fear of death drove him to extreme lengths. He dispatched expeditions across the sea in search of the mythical Isles of the Immortals, hoping his envoys would return with an elixir of life. He consulted with alchemists and mystics who promised him magical potions, many of which ironically contained mercury and likely hastened his decline rather than extending his life. This desperate quest for immortality is one of the great paradoxes of his reign. A man who had built an eternal empire couldn't accept his own finite existence. This obsession also led to the creation of his final, and perhaps most astonishing, project: his tomb, located near the modern city of Xi'an. This vast, underground mausoleum was designed to be a palace for the afterlife, and to guard him for all eternity, he commissioned an entire army made of terracotta. The Terracotta Army is one of the most incredible archaeological discoveries of all time. Thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, each with a unique face, along with horses and chariots, were arranged in battle formation, ready to protect their emperor in the next world. The sheer scale and artistry of this clay army, hidden underground for over 2 millennia, is a breathtaking testament to the power, resources, and incredible vision of the first emperor. The Qin Dynasty, for all its power and glory, was remarkably short-lived. It lasted for only 15 years, collapsing just a few years after Qin Shi Huang's death in 210 BCE. The emperor's strict laws, heavy taxes, and demanding labor projects had created widespread resentment. After his death, his less capable son was unable to hold the empire together, and it quickly crumbled under the weight of massive rebellions. And yet, the impact of the Qin Dynasty was anything but short. It was profound and everlasting. Qin Shi Huang had set a precedent. He created the very concept of a unified China, the administrative and cultural foundations. He laid the centralized bureaucracy, the standardized writing system. The legal framework would be adopted and built upon by the succeeding Han Dynasty and would endure for over 2,000 years. Though his methods were often brutal and his rule was authoritarian, Qin Shi Huang is forever remembered as the first emperor, the man who ended centuries of war and forged a nation out of chaos. He was a visionary builder and a ruthless tyrant, a unifier and a despot. His story is a powerful reminder that history is complex, and the legacies of great figures are rarely black and white. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey back to ancient China. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel for more stories from history. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. We'll see you in the next video.